We're going to be cleaning up our background and we're going to be doing a little bit of retouching here on ACES. Alright guys, welcome to part 2. We're going to be cleaning up our background and we're going to be doing a little bit of retouching here on ACES. So let's go ahead and create a new layer, Shift Option Command N, we'll do that. I'm going to hit Command G, that's going to group the layer with itself. So I like to stay in, work in groups. We have our fire group, the planning group that we made earlier with this stuff on here. I like to stay in groups, and it just makes things a little bit easier. So we're going to just go with this background. There we go. And inside of our background, let's just click on this layer, and this is where we're going to be taking care of our background. So how do we take care of areas like this and like that? Well, one of the best things we can do here is actually, we have a lot of information here on our brick wall. So we can translate this. We can take this here and kind of fill it in here and do the same thing here. Now we are going to get a repeating pattern over and over again. Well, brick is repeating for the most part, so that's not a horrible thing. But it is going to be like a little bit, they're not going to wind up matching up completely. It's usually not that big of a deal if they don't match up completely. You can blend it together, and if they're in the background and kind of like out of focus and dark, really people won't really notice it that much. So it's usually we're just going to go with it. So let's go ahead and show you guys how it works. We've got our background. I'm going to go ahead and grab our clone stamp tool. So we're going to hit S for the clone stamp tool. Let's make our brush a little bit bigger. And you can do that by holding Control and Option, and clicking and holding and going left and the right is going to make your brush larger or smaller, and up and down will make your brush harder and softer, which is really cool. If you guys are on a Mac, it's going to be Control and Option. If you're on a PC, it's going to be Alt, Control, and right click. There we go. Okay, so here with our clone stamp tool, and I'm selecting current and below, I'm going to hold Alt or Option and just sample right over here, this area, and then we're going to start painting it in over here in this area there. Alright, now I'd realize I have part of ACES fingers in this. That's just going to happen sometimes. But let's go ahead and start a little bit higher. Let's start right up here, and there we go. Starting a little bit higher so I can get a little bit more space without getting his fingers in there. There we go. Okay, cool. Well, if I have the fingers in there, not a big deal. I'll just use either my eraser tool or a layer mask or something like that, and just kind of erase those back out. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and just do that again. I'm going to make a new layer, so Shift Option Command N for a new layer, and let's just kind of like bring this in. Again, hold Alt or Option and sample your point, and then I'm going to paint in right over here, again here on the brickwork. And this is, remember guys, this is all going to be like out of focus and pretty dark in just a little bit of time, so it's not really that vital that everything's perfect. Okay, and you can see they're blending decently together. I'm going to put a layer mask on this layer, and then we're just going to paint black on our layer mask right up here at the top, and that's just going to help those blend back together just a little bit better. Alright, that looks pretty good there too. Let's go ahead and layer mask that out. Let's do it again. I'm going to hit Shift Option Command N for a new layer again, and this time we'll just go right over here. There we go. Kind of just fill this whole area in there. Maybe we just move that up a little bit. Okay, cool. So now we're going to put a layer mask on there and layer mask off the top as well. Okay, cool. So there we have a brick wall now. If you want to just, work on this a little bit more, you can honestly go back over top of it and like grab your clone stamp and just like, if you want that area to be a little bit lighter, just kind of go back over the top of it and clone stamp over again. So you just kind of keep on going with this stuff. It really doesn't, the small details, especially because it's out of focus, and you'll see later on, you really will not wind up noticing that. All right, we do need to take care of his shoulder though. We need to make sure his shoulder's cut out pretty well. So to do that, what we're going to do is I'm going to use the pen tool to do this. If you guys have not used the pen tool before, I would recommend going into go to Florn.com and go to one of the episodes and then go over to the pen tool tags. I'll just show you how to do it. All right. There we go. That's Florn.com. You guys can see all the other cool things that I have up in my, not anymore. Haha. All right. So if you go to like today's episode, or for instance, something like that. Okay, here we go. You can go to tags and then here over to pen tool. And you can find just about, you can find anything you need for the pen tool right there. Okay, but I'll show you guys how to use it anyway. So what we're going to do is basically I just need to make a selection right around Ace's arm here. So I'm going to click here, kind of outside there. Come in, and I'm just clicking and dragging. I'm not holding anything with my keyboard, holding anything on the keyboard. If you do create a point that's like a little bit farther out or in from the point you actually want to make, just hold down the control or the command key, and then you'll be able to click right here on this point and kind of move it around. So I can, even if I didn't make it, in the right exact place to begin with, I could just click here and move it around. If you start making a curve and then it kind of gets off, like I did like there, all you have to do is bring your cursor back to the original point, and you get something that looks like a box with two lines sticking out of it. Click there, and that'll know to like you want to continue going on with this curve. All right, there we are. And let's just go ahead and bring that back down there. Very nice. So that's a pretty decent curve that, defines, oh, you know what? I'm going to just hit Option Command Z. I'm going to go around the other side because I want this to wind up being invisible. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to right click on this, and we're going to go to Make Selection, and we'll just say OK. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to click back on this background. We're going to click that and make it visible once more. So since we have this selection, all I need to do is click on that layer mask button, and it's going to add that layer mask for me. But right now you can see it's actually the opposite of what I want the layer mask to look like. It's including, the background there on his arm instead of the opposite. So just click on your layer mask here and hit Command I. That will invert your layer mask, and then you'll be good to go. Let's just paint black right there. Very cool. So we've just kind of inverted our layer mask. Now, you'll notice that the edge here is a little bit sharp, like it's just a little too hard. You can actually click on your layer mask itself and go to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur, and you can give your layer mask a Gaussian blur. There we go. And you can see that looks a lot better. So there's the before and the after. Because it's a little out of focus in this area anyway, so it's just going to look a little bit better. Okay, now that we have that layer mask already defined, I want to make this area a little bit darker here as well. So I'm going to just grab a Curve Adjustment Layer, and there we go. Kind of bring that down in brightness. And keep in mind, it is still visible inside of this group. I'm going to hit Command I, which is going to invert the layer mask on that, making it black, and then just paint white with a regular old paintbrush right down here. Alright, and that's just going to keep it from getting so light down there. Let's just zoom out and see what we've got. So already we can see, we've taken care of a window. We've duplicated the bricks right over, and then went ahead and masked that out there. So my layer mask looks like this, and now we've got a couple of bricks, which is really cool. Okay, let's go ahead and make a new layer. Well, we'll just call this, let's make this one background 1, and I'm going to create a new layer. So Shift Option Command N and hit Command G to group that with itself. We'll just call this background 2. And this is where we're going to take care of this guy right here. So let's just zoom in, and this is actually going to be a lot easier. We're going to hit S for the clone stamp tool and just go from like the right over here to the left. And then we'll go from the left to the right. We'll just go back and forth. That'll keep from duplicating information too much. There we go. And just kind of come on down. Maybe make some darker areas in that, something like that. Alright, there we go. That looks pretty good. So just like a little bit of, whatever back there. Just a little whatever. That's my secret. I just put a little bit of whatever. I just find a very small amount and I just put it in there. Okay. So that's taking care of it as well with the clone stamp tool. And we really don't have to be, his arm should be like pretty well defined, but this I don't need to go ahead and grab a, pen tool or layer mask or anything like that. All right, that's taken care of. Now let's see what we can do about this. Let's create another layer, Shift Option Command N, and again we're going to be with our we're going to be with our clone stamp tool, and we'll sample right there and go ahead and just paint right in about there. Alright, so you hold down Alt or Option to sample, and then you just start painting wherever you want it to paint. And a really quick tip is, this is actually really cool. Sometimes if you want to see what you're about to paint, like I'm going to sample here, hold down Alt or Option to do that. And then if you hold down Alt as well as Shift, it's going to give you a little preview here. So you can actually see, you know, what you're about to be painting. And you can kind of decide, is it in the right place? Does it fit? Etc. 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 So it's just a quick little way to do that. Like here it was too light, so I'm going to sample here instead. And that actually works quite a bit better. Okay, and there you can kind of just make things make a little bit more sense. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing here. Sample over there and just kind of like paint in. And it's okay if you paint a little bit like over top of the fingers in this case, because you can always use a layer mask. It's a little bit better to like over exaggerate or, you know, paint a little bit too far and then mask out than it is to not paint far enough. And the reason there is because it's just a lot easier to use a layer mask, and you really want as large of a sample size as possible whenever you're using something like the clone stamp tool, because it's just going to help everything like be really continuous and consistent. So if you're having troubles with consistency, try just sampling like a larger area. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to grab a curve adjustment layer. I'm going to click here and just make it a bit darker, and then hit Command I again on this, and then basically what we're going to do is I'm going to just paint white on this layer, just over here, just so I can make this area a bit darker, because I also don't want it to be that light. So, you know, if you have to do what I just did, like, you know, clone stamp from an area of brick or whatever that's a little bit lighter, and you're like, oh, I really don't want it that light, it's no big deal. Just grab a curves adjustment layer and you can kind of fix that up really quickly. Okay, that looks really good. Now let's just go in here, and this is what's covering up part of the fingers. So I'm going to click on this layer mask, or click on the layer, click add a layer mask to it, and then we're just going to make like a little bit smaller brush, a little bit harder as well. And just make sure that you can see all the detail there. Alright, so I'm just painting black on my layer mask right now, and that's allowing the hand to kind of come through. And then I like to make these layers just visible and invisible, just to see, like, am I missing out on anything? You know, is it showing all the detail that I want? Cool. I think that looks pretty good. There's going to be a giant fireball and all kinds of crazy stuff right here, so for the time being, that's pretty good. So there's our background 1 and our background 2. Let's just, I'm going to make this not as dark right there. So I'll just grab my brush tool, just use a regular old soft brush in this case, and I'll just paint black. Alright, and that looks pretty good. So we've got our background 1 and our background 2 together. So there we have, really didn't take that long actually. That took, you know, like about 10 minutes to do that. And just kind of cleans up the background and everything, makes it a little bit better and easier to focus in on a subject. Like that's a little distraction. That's just a little easier. So let's create a new layer, Shift Option Command N, and then I'm going to hit Command G to group that with itself. And then here we're just going to, let's just call this retouch. We're not going to do a ton of retouching. I generally don't do a ton of retouching, especially with guys, and the reason is just because I think a little bit more of it, like a natural look, generally looks pretty well. Looks pretty good, especially on this image. It's not a beauty shot. It's supposed to look like this. But I'm going to go through and take care of just a couple areas. So what I'm doing here is using the healing brush tool. So I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, and that creates a sample point, and then you just paint right over the place in which you actually want your change to be made. And try to sample something similar in texture to where you actually want to paint. So I'm going to like smooth his tongue out, for instance. See how it's got this little stuff in there? I'm going to hold Alt or Option here, and then I'm going to sample paint right over the top of that. And you can see it just kind of like smooths out the texture. So sample a smoother area and paint over a rougher area. There we go. So it's keeping the color and everything like that, which is really nice. It's just allowing me to smooth all that area out. So it's not like there's anything wrong with his tongue. It's just I wanted it to look a little bit smoother. So this is how you do it. All right, and we'll take care of all kinds of little other areas like that. Little, like, you know, bits of sparkle or highlight or, you know, weird things. We'll take care of those. All right, we did spray him also with like a mist, and he's got baby oil all over his skin, so that's why he's like super shiny. It's amazing what you can do with baby oil. It's one of my favorite things in the world, for photography anyway. I don't use it outside of photography much. There we go. So just kind of like making this invisible, so you can see what we did, and not a whole lot needs to be done. Again, I like to keep guys relatively natural looking, but you know, just kind of cleaning it up. We don't want any of this sort of thing distracting from the overall image. That's basically the goal here. It's not to make this guy into a beauty queen. We're just trying to make sure it's not like distracting. Like, ooh, look at that big pimple on his forehead or whatever, you know, that's keeping me from enjoying my image. All right, and if you overdo an area, just either grab your eraser tool and erase it over, or just patch tool or healing brush tool, healing brush right over top of it again, and you should be good to go. All right, yeah, that looks really good. Let's just take care of a couple areas like here on his skin and things like that. Yeah, but for the most part, that's really good. Okay, zoom out there. We can see kind of the before and after. Cool. The next thing I'm going to do is take care of this color. It's just a little bit, it doesn't look very natural. It's a little bit like too blue, almost towards the purple side. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab a Hue Adjustment Layer. So go to my Adjustment Layers, go to Hue Saturation. Now I'm going to click over here in the blues. Let's go ahead and grab our eyedropper so we know we're actually selecting the correct blues there. And I'm just going to like lower the saturation and increase the brightness a little bit. Let's expand this over just a little bit more so it increases, or it includes a little bit more. All right, and then we can work on our hue as well. There we go, just to make that a little bit more like natural looking. Bring the saturation down. Okay, very cool. So you can see that really it doesn't take too long, it's not too hard, and yeah, basically just like changing that color. You can do that with everything. If I go to Hue Saturation, if I created another one and I clicked on like reds and I use my eyedropper to change this color here, then I can just change my hue here, and it's going to change like everything that's within that color range is going to change. Doesn't always look good, but it will change. If you wanted to change it like slightly, like a little more yellow or a little more red, you could do that, and that usually works pretty well. If you want to go like all the way to here, generally that's you get something weird like that, but just a little shift and you're pretty good. Okay. There we go. So that is our retouch. You can see that's like the lightest retouching I think I've done in my entire life, but you get the idea. It's just to like help get rid of some of these things. And our backgrounds. So very cool, guys. And that is the end of part 2. And in the next part, we're going to be adding fire and bringing the heat. I'll see you then.